All right, welcome back to our third video on the body systems. And this time we're going to cover the respiratory system. Now let's start with the anatomy of the respiratory system. It's split up into two divisions. The first part is the upper respiratory tract. The first structure to know is the nose and nasal cavity. The role of this is to filter air and moisten it. The next structure is called the pharynx, which acts as a passageway for both food and air. And the third structure is the larynx. This contains your vocal cords, which allows you to speak. The second division is called the lower respiratory tract. And the first one is the trachea, which is a large tube which allows air in. This splits into two branches called the bronchi. And then the bronchi split into even smaller branches called bronchioles. Finally, they lead into tiny little air-filled sacs called alveoli, which is the site of gas exchange. So earlier we mentioned that the pharynx is a passageway for both air and food. And looking at this diagram, we see that the larynx and the trachea are in front of the esophagus, which leads to your digestive system. So there's an important piece of cartilage called the epiglottis. And what this does is it's open when you're inhaling air and exhaling, but it shuts tightly when you swallow food, so it passes over the larynx and goes right into the esophagus. Now we're going to talk about superficial lung structure. And just like the heart, it's a mirror. So we have the right lung here and the left lung on the right side. The right lung has 3 lobes, while the left lung has 2 lobes. And the reason for this is because your heart sits on the left side of the body, so it needs extra space for your heart. There's also another structure that should be noted here, and that's called the pleura. The pleura is a double membraned fluid-filled sac which reduces friction on your lungs. So now we're going to talk about ventilation. Ventilation includes both inhalation and exhalation. So lungs are made out of blood vessels, connective tissue, and to a lesser extent, nervous tissue, and then finally, millions of alveoli. So lungs they don't have a way to move themselves because they're not made out of muscle. They're mostly a spongy kind of tissue. The way to get around this is external muscles. And the first one, and the main one, is your diaphragm, which is shown in dark red. And there's also secondary muscles which help, which are called your intercostal muscles. This is used when you're under heavy exercise, and then they relax to let more air in and contract to push air out faster. But you mainly use your diaphragm to breathe. So step 1 is inhalation. Your diaphragm moves down, which allows for more space of the lungs, and your lungs expand, taking in oxygen in the air. Also, just so you know, air is 21% oxygen. So if that shows up on the exam, that's just a piece of information to know. And then step 2 is exhalation, when your diaphragm moves up and compresses the lungs to push air out. And then this repeats over and over, and that's how you ventilate. Now we're going to take a closer look deeper into the lungs and how gas exchange actually works. So now we zoomed in on a microscopic level. Here we have the bronchiole on the left, in the middle is the alveoli, and then this red circle is a capillary. An important thing to know is that the respiratory and circulatory system are deeply connected. So the alveoli is wrapped in a ton of capillaries. Now we have a red blood cell which is deoxygenated. It's carrying CO2. This comes from the heart when we talked about the cardiovascular system and how the right side pushes the blood into the lungs. Now it ends up here. So we're back at step 1 and we inhale oxygen. It ends up in the alveoli, and this is step 2. This is called gas exchange, when carbon dioxide and oxygen swap places on a red blood cell. Now the blood is oxygenated again, and then it will be sent back to the heart to be pumped throughout the rest of the body. And then finally, you exhale, which releases the carbon dioxide from your lungs back out into the air, and then the cycle repeats when you inhale and exhale. So this video is shorter, and it covers ventilation. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And that covers just about it. I will be making a video on immunity shortly. Best of luck with your studying.